If someone told you 20 years ago that a company making graphics cards would one day be worth more than the economies of entire countries, you probably would have laughed. Not because NVIDIA wasn't a good company, but because the comparison doesn't even sound fair. Countries have millions of people. They build roads, they grow food, they run schools, they have armies, airports, factories, and entire cities. NVIDIA makes computer chips, so how can one company be worth more than all of that? At first, it seems like another crazy headline, but the more you look into it, the more interesting the question becomes. Because this isn't really just a story about NVIDIA, it's a story about how the world changes and how our definition of value changes with it. For most of human history, wealth was simple. If you owned more land, you were richer. Land meant food. Food meant survival, and survival meant power. Then the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Factories became more valuable than farmland. Machines could produce more than people ever could. Suddenly, the countries that built industries grew faster than the ones that simply owned land. A century later, the world changed again. Oil became one of the most important resources on Earth. Countries fought over it. Companies were built around it. Entire economies depended on it. Then came the internet. Something changed that nobody had seen before. Some of the world's most valuable companies weren't producing oil. They weren't mining gold, they weren't building cars, they were building software. At first that sounded just as strange. How could a website be worth more than companies that made real things? But over time, the answer became obvious. Software wasn't replacing factories. It was changing how every factory worked. Software started changing almost every industry. Banks, shopping, communication, entertainment, things that once depended on physical places slowly moved into the digital world. Looking back now, it doesn't seem surprising anymore, because that's what history does. It makes impossible ideas feel obvious. Today it's happening again. This time it's AI. Every company wants to build the next breakthrough, but no matter what they're building, they all need the same thing: computing power. And that's where NVIDIA comes in. For years, NVIDIA was known for making graphics cards, mostly for gamers. It wasn't the kind of company people talked about every day. Then AI took off. Suddenly, those same graphics cards were doing something completely different. Instead of making games look better, they were helping train AI models. The technology hadn't changed overnight. The world's demand had. NVIDIA didn't suddenly become important. The world simply started needing what NVIDIA had been building all along. At first, the story seems simple. AI needs powerful chips. NVIDIA makes powerful chips. But if that was the whole story, NVIDIA wouldn't be this far ahead. But here's the thing. If making the fastest chip was all that mattered, someone else would have caught up by now. Technology gets copied all the time. Hardware alone rarely keeps a company ahead forever. So why is NVIDIA still so far ahead? Because the real product was never just the chip. Over the years, NVIDIA built something much harder to copy: a platform. Its software became the standard for AI developers. Researchers built around it, universities taught it, startups relied on it, cloud companies expanded it. Little by little, an entire ecosystem grew around NVIDIA. And once that happens, people aren't just buying your product anymore. They're building on top of it. That's a very different kind of business. Here's the interesting part. Having great technology is not enough. Many companies create great products, but only a few become truly valuable. Why? Because the market is not only looking at what a company does today, it's looking at what that company could become tomorrow. Nobody buys a stock because of what already happened. They buy it because of what they believe happens next. And when investors look at NVIDIA, they are not just seeing a chip company. They are seeing a world where AI keeps expanding. More companies using AI, more data centers being built, more demand for computing power. If that future becomes reality, NVIDIA could become even more important than it is today. Of course, the market can be wrong. It has been wrong before, and it will be wrong again. That's part of investing. But a stock price tells us something interesting. It shows what millions of people believe the future might look like. And right now, many of them believe NVIDIA will be one of the companies shaping it. So, Is NVIDIA really worth more than countries? Maybe that's not the right way to look at it. Countries and companies create value in completely different ways. Countries build societies, companies build tools, and sometimes those tools become so important that the world starts depending on them. That is what makes NVIDIA interesting. Not because it is bigger than a country, it isn't, but because the world believes the technology it provides could become one of the foundations of the next era. For thousands of years, the most valuable things were physical: land, gold, oil, factories. But every generation eventually finds something new, something that changes how people live, how they work, how they create. Maybe NVIDIA will be remembered as the company that helped build the AI era. Maybe someone else will. Because history rarely belongs to the company we expect. It belongs to the companies that build what the future needs. And maybe that's why a company that makes computer chips ended up being valued more than countries.